other things which might blow up, and you mentioned them already, and that is the central role of Iran and all of these things going on in the Middle East and beyond the Middle East. I wrote a piece recently for the Daily Express saying, and a slightly provocative piece, to be honest, saying that at some point the USA and its allies are going to have to deal with Iran
Yep.
in one way or the other, because
Yep.
Iran is central to all the trouble. It's central to Hezbollah, Hamas, Syria, the Houthi rebels sending drones to Russia and allowing the Russians to manufacture Iranian drones there. And now, of course, the threat to shipping in both the Red Sea and elsewhere. And at some point, it seems to me, Philip, that the USA is going to have to deal with Iran.
Very much so. What's interesting is the links in there. Why is Iran doing what it wants to do? Well, Iran has got this ambition to be the center of a wider caliphate. That is what Hezbollah's remit is, to create a central caliphate with Iran at the center of it, bringing in all the other Arab nations and bits and pieces. But we're seeing this unholy alliance between Russia, Iran, China, North Korea, and elsewhere that's coming in. And Iran's supplying Russia with the Shahad 136 and 131 drones and potentially other ammunition and missiles. What does Iran want out of it? And that's the question that we have to keep asking. Iran, the driver for Iran is to get something that it can then influence not just regional but global politics and anti-American politics. It wants a nuclear weapon. It wants nuclear.
Do you think? But do you think the nuclear weapon is just part and parcel of getting to what it really wants, which is to be the global Islamic leader?
Yes, yeah, very much so. And this ties in with all of the troubles that there are across the Middle East. The war that's being fought out in Yemen, the fighting that's happened in Syria and elsewhere. In reality, if you strip it back, it's a simple Sunni Shia civil war that's been going on for centuries, with Saudi Arabia and Iran representing the two factions that are there, but being fought out by proxy. Iran knows that or suspects Saudi Arabia has got access to nuclear technology and possible nuclear weapons. There's a lot of rumors around. It's not been officially confirmed, and Iran wants the same. So that it can gain its position.
Israel has got nuclear weapons.
Israel has got nuclear weapons. Again, they haven't formally admitted it.
Yeah.
But
and so I don't see any circumstances in which the USA or their main ally Israel will allow Iran to have we've seen them disrupt it on 2 or 3 occasions already. But at some point, there's going to have to be some sort of major confrontation or an internal revolution in Iran.
Yeah, and I think that would be what would be preferred, because if there is a confrontation, and there's a confrontation in Europe with Russia and Ukraine, there's a very real danger, and we've got those links between Iran, Russia, China, and North Korea, and all of that coming together. There's a very grave danger that those would link up. And as soon as they start to link up, then we're in the game of a potential global conflict. And that's one thing the West will do everything it can to try and avoid. And if that means destabilizing Iran from an internal perspective, it will do. The sole reason why 2 carrier battle groups from the United States were deployed into the region is not because they wanted to support the Israel-Hamas war. Israel could deal with Hamas all by themselves. It's to try and place military capability. And we have to remember that military capability is as much a diplomatic tool and a political tool as it is, there to fight. It's sending a political message to the Iranians and to the others.
Yeah, very much.
Stay out of it.
We are, we're here, we're local.
And no matter what Iran says from a rhetoric perspective, the US have got the ability to destroy Iran very, very quickly indeed. And they know that.
It's one of the things that the USA would be very anxious to avoid if it possibly can. Can I just introduce a slight wild card here, talking about the USA and its role as global policeman, whether it likes it or not, that's what it is. But we have the very real possibility that come the US presidential elections this year in November, that Donald Trump could well be re-elected. And of course, Biden has his detractors, but Trump is such a wild card.
Yeah.
And he's already threatened to withdraw the US from NATO. And goodness knows what he'll do. Do you have any sort of views on that?
It is, and I think does Trump provide the international commentators real manna from heaven when it comes to being able to speculate as to what he's going to do and what he's not going to do? Yes, he does. If you look at what Trump did when he was president beforehand, and I disagree with his politics and his approach and everything else, but he stimulated NATO and NATO members to start to spend more money on their own defenses before Ukraine happened, and then they were in a position they already started to build up their defense industries, and can use that to support Ukraine by threatening to pull out of NATO. Will Donald Trump stop the support to Ukraine and to Israel and to everything else? I don't think so, and the reason why I don't think so is down to money. And if you look at what's happening to the US taxpayers' money that's being spent in supporting Ukraine and supporting Israel with military material, it's being spent in US defense industries. So the ammunition has been manufactured in the United States. The equipment that's been provided is being manufactured in the United States.
And that equals money, jobs.
That means jobs. That means taxpayers' income. And a lot of the defense industries are in the different Republican states. And therefore, it's his home states, and it's a very good way of supporting the job market within the United States, growing the U.S. economy and elsewhere, using U.S. taxpayers' money. That is helping the U.S. defense budget by degrading one of the greatest enemies that's out there without having to put U.S. troops on the front line, and therefore he'll see that.
I mean, it's a terrible thing to say, but happy days for the Western defense industries built on the misfortune of those caught up in the various conflicts.
Very much so, and happy days for the governments who've got strong defense industries within them. And again, the Americans are the world policemen because of their mass and their capability, but also the UK and to a degree France are elements of the world policemen because we're all permanent members of the Security Council of the United Nations. And to be a permanent member, you have to take that global responsibility. It's such a shame that China and Russia are the aggressors in a lot of this and are not taking that responsibility and are stirring a lot of the problems.
Just narrowing it down, as you've neatly led it there, Philip, into the domestic end of the spectrum and the UK. There's a lot of speculation, commentary, etc., in military circles in the UK that, in fact, our armed services are now so degraded and diminished that there's not very much we can actually do. They're all Navy's troubles in terms of crewing ships has been all over the media over the last week. The RAF can't train enough fast jet pilots for non-existent fast jets in many cases. And the army is having an immense problem, not just recruiting, but in retention. Do you think the UK military has now got to the point where it is actually incapable of fulfilling its proper role?
Well, I don't think it's properly defined its proper role and been in a position to fulfill it at any stage in recent history. I think what the Ukraine war in particular is showing is the importance of the defense industrial base and the importance of retaining a manufacturing capability for boring stuff, barrels for main battle tanks, barrels for artillery. Those are limiting in that there are many European manufacturers can't make barrels for main battle tanks to supply them to the Ukrainians. Ukrainians can only fire a certain amount of ammunition, and then the tanks stop working. So they're so that's a lesson that's coming out, and it's important that we learn it now. I think, putting into perspective, it's easy to be doom and gloom against the British military, but we can still deploy a carrier battle group, albeit with wider NATO support. And we've always envisaged working with NATO down to the Indo-Pacific region, with not just UK military aircraft on it, but US military aircraft on it as well. So we can still do that, albeit very limited. We can still fly aircraft to protect the Falkland Islands if necessary, directly from the UK in a way that we could never do in 1982, whenever that happened, and reinforce that very quickly. And we could even carry out raids into from the UK or from UK bases overseas, easily down into there with what we've got as air assets. So there is a greater air power capability. Are they optimal? Are they what we need? No, there's a lot more that's in. It's the army that's in real difficulty, and the army, I think, has lost itself completely with what it was focusing on in Iraq and then Afghanistan. It forgot completely about war fighting.
The army sort of reverted to type in what they called apparently after the end of the Second World War proper soldiering
Yeah.
of the northwest frontier and in sandy places.
Yeah, you and I are the ilk where we remember. And I'm not sure whether you were a German warrior. I'm sure you were, but
Yeah.
you remember getting that active edge notification
Yes, all the
at,
time.
at 3 o'clock in the morning in Germany, and you get the regiment out the barracks within 12 hours.
Yeah,
And that 12 hours includes getting down to the main ammunition dumps and getting your war stocks of ammunition, and
yeah,
you're out in your forming up area. We
yeah,
can't get a light infantry battalion out the door in 2 weeks at the minute, and
yeah.
therefore we've
Well,
lost
that's just
we've lost it completely. And that's the army's fault.
yeah,
I think the army has got it fundamentally wrong in their approach to everything,
yeah.
and
I
they've
think
got
we
the
have
biggest
to,
uphill struggle.
again, without naming names, because that would be unfair in many ways. I think that we have to look at the hierarchy of the armed
Yeah,
services over the 15 years, and it has been dominated by light infantryers who are much more at home in counter insurgency operations in Afghanistan and Iraq than they are perhaps in wheeling armored formations around Northwest Europe. But and I don't think we're going to regain that, to be honest, not
yeah.
in the short to medium term. Is it your perception that we are now seeing the world divided quite clearly into two camps? The Russia, North Korea, Iran, China camp, and the US, Western allies, and Indo-Pacific sort of liberal democratic nations camp. And that could be the basis of future conflict rather than any of the specific operations and wars that we've been talking about up to now.
100%. We're seeing those two camps, and I describe the camps in slightly different ways. You've got the Russian, Chinese, North Korean, Iranian camp are countries that can think in generational terms or multi-generational terms and can plan what it is that they're doing below the threshold that would we'd see as something that would stimulate conflict from the West, because the Western countries are tied into prime ministerial or presidential timelines, or more accurately, what's going to be in tomorrow morning's headlines, and will the government survive timelines in what's going on. So the Chinese can nibble away to achieve their ultimate objective, having set that objective 20-25 years ago. And we will see things, protest about things in our very rapid political way that we do, but not actually recognize the implications of what it is that they're trying to achieve in that longer time frame, because it's 2 or 3 governments away, and the government of the day doesn't really care. And isn't investing in dealing with that.
So
And this is
Western short-termism, basically,
yeah, very very much so.
As opposed to a generational approach.
Yeah, and we're in real trouble. And if we look at potentially why Iran, China, Russia and stuff would be working together at the moment. Russia wants international oil prices through the roof because that helps them fund what it is that they're doing into Ukraine and elsewhere. It's got good outlets for oil, and it can sell it cheaply into India, into Pakistan, into China and elsewhere. And India and China need cheap oil reserves that are going in. But anything else that goes out in the wider global network they can make bigger profit on. Iran's in a position to influence the global oil price by restricting what's going on around the Straits of Hormuz and trade activities in the Red Sea. So that's why Iran could be and probably is backing, or Iran is backing the Houthis and backing a lot of backing Hezbollah and a lot of the activity that's going on, and want a wider regional conflict. Now, if they are working together on that, and that's the bit that is missing at the moment. But we're seeing senior Iranians going to Moscow and senior Moscow diplomats going into Iran and elsewhere, and we're seeing them going into China. We've seen their militaries working together much more, which suggests that we are getting this alliance of that is potentially going to undermine and threaten our complete way of life coming together. And for the first time ever, and I joined the military at 18, so I've been looking at geopolitical from a security perspective for 40 plus years. It's the first time ever I can see a clear path, or a couple of different clear paths, to the Third World War.
I would not wish to be a sort of doomsday sayer. Certainly not to close off this particular podcast. But I do think that the prospect of another world war is not as unlikely as it was, say, 25 years ago when we were facing the Russians over the northwest German plain, when things seemed much simpler. But that's perhaps for another time. Well, that's all been absolutely fascinating. And thanks to Philip for joining me on this podcast. I hope it's not going to be the last time. In fact, we've just been discussing off camera how much other stuff we haven't covered yet. So there's plenty of material going forward. And let's hope that we can rejoin various topics as the year progresses. But for the meantime, Philip, many, many thanks for joining me and providing your insight and expertise. I hope you found it enjoyable too. I certainly have. And I can only look forward to doing it sometime in the future and the not too distant future.
Stuart, thank you very much indeed. I've definitely enjoyed it.
Great.